I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel like we're in prison. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. I'm ready to be unleashed as fuck. Tired of the madness, done with the sadness. Gonna break free and be unleashed.
Hello, hey leash breakers. We're joined today by somebody who embodies the work of unleashing in her own bold and powerful way, Deanna Jones. Deanna is a soulful disruptor who helps women break free from the external noise and internal chaos that keeps them stuck and disconnected. Her work can be found at deannajones.com. She guides people back to themselves, back to their wholeness, to their fire and their freedom.
That's right. And she's here to talk about what it really means to come home to yourself, especially in a world that's consistently trying to pull you away from who you actually are. You're going to want to lean in and pay attention for this one. I know I'm very much looking forward to hearing what Deanna has to say.
And you're listening to Unleashed AF, the podcast that tears off the mask, breaks the leashes, and dares you to lead like your power actually matters. I'm Deidre Beecham, visibility catalyst and creator of the Medusa Effect. I spent years trapped in my nice girl training, performing, pleasing, disappearing. Unlearning that changed everything, and now I help women to burn their own masks, reclaim their voice, and feel safe taking up space fully, unapologetically, and in their own power.
That's right. And I am Jenny Battig, certified hypnotherapist, coach, human factors engineer, and liberator of your subconscious superpowers. I help people understand and unleash what's already inside them so they can stop sabotaging and start soaring. And together we are
Leash breakers,
dream makers, risk takers. Don't you mess around with us. And if you love what we're about, hit like, follow, subscribe, and drop your thoughts in the comments or at unleashedafpodcast.com, where we have a page called WWJDD, which stands for What Would Jenny and Deidre Do? So we are here to expose.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah. I'm starting to get a little ahead of myself. We're here to expose the leashes, explore what it really means to be free, and to help you step into your fully authentic, unleashed life.
Awesome. And here is Deanna Jones.
There she is.
Hey, everybody.
Magic. So we're super excited to have you with us today, Deanna. And we don't have a lot of guests on our show. But I have been actually trying to get Deanna on the show for a while now. Jenny keeps saying, have you heard from Deanna? I'm like, I'm trying. I really am. I'm trying. So we're really excited to have you here.
Thank you very much. Really I am excited to be here. And I'm sorry it took so many Fridays for this to work, but it's okay. This is the Friday. This is it.
It's just when it's supposed to happen.
It's exactly right.
It's supposed to happen.
And we're live, I understand.
We are.
Anything can happen when we're live. I can't wait to see what comes out of my mouth.
You never know.
Usually I'm censored, and
you
never know. So stick around, everybody, because
there we go.
I might be dropping some big truths down.
Well, it is called
Unleashed
AF podcast. So,
yes.
and you heard the opening song. So
I loved it.
I think you're safe.
I think you made up a song too. The second one there, being unleashed. I love that. Yeah. There's so many ways we can go with unleashed, but yeah, I have my marks from my leash for many years. So I'm glad to have my leash off. I'm excited to tell you how I got it off, and yes, I'm just happy to be here.
Yeah, so that's a great way to start. Why don't we start there? So tell us your story. What do you want the audience, what do you want us to know about you?
I can begin with my story.
Yeah.
So I was blowing through the cosmos like, I would say, a star or something like that. That's how I felt. And one day I would get to walk in the Garden of Eden. Okay, who am I kidding? My parents were probably drinking Thunderbird, listening to Sexual Healing, and I was born. But I did imagine myself different. If I could have imagined it, then it turned out, because the first thing that happens when I came out, of course, is the doctor smacks you. This was the late 60s. But the second thing is, based on all his training, he holds me up and says, "It's a boy." And I think, "It's a boy? No, it's not a boy. What is he basing this on? He doesn't even know me yet." And of course, he was basing it on hundreds of hours of training that says if you see a penis, then in fact it is a boy, which is not necessarily true, but we'll get into it a little bit. But I, from the moment that I had consciousness or I thought about my life, I was 4 years old, and I thought, something doesn't feel right here. I felt like everybody around me was drinking ice water, and I was drinking this sour lemon water. I didn't feel comfortable a lot of times being with the boys. I had two sisters. They never forced me to dress up. I never read a book on the subject. Of course, it was not talked about in the schools, but I can remember ever since I had been in the schools that I wanted to spend more time with the girls, and I wanted to be more like the girls. And again, there was no outside influence, so it doesn't matter. Today, they can pass all the laws they want on censorship. We're still going to be here because I was born with this. I will never doubt that as long as I live. And as I continue to age, I had two thoughts when looking at a girl. I thought, she's pretty. And the second thought was always followed by, I want to be her. I want somehow to be her. And again, this just came out of my mind. I would pull my sister's clothes out of the hamper and I'd put them on after I locked the bathroom door. We didn't want any surprises from the family yet. There was plenty of time for that later, but and I look in the mirror and I just felt so beautiful. And of course, you know, I know that I probably wasn't. My dad had given me a crew cut or a short haircut, but I just could see something there. And, you know, Deidre and Jenny, it's just amazing how much shame I felt around this because there was no one else around me who felt this way. And that's how I came to understand that I was different. It would take me 50 more years for somebody to tell me what this was. It never left me, not once. There was never a break from this. There was never a time where I said, oh my gosh, I can't believe I ever thought that. I'm glad I've grown out of that. It was constant. It was constantly nagging at me. That's basically my story in childhood. What I do, what I have to do eventually is find a way to kill that, to suppress it. Because we are born, and this applies to everybody, we're put in a box, right? I was put in the boy box, or you're put in the female box. And that's the box you have to stay in. And if you get out of that box, there are severe penalties for that.
And it's interesting. You said something before we started this whole conversation, before we got on air. And you had said that that while you were growing up, that you had kind of feminine characteristics, qualities that were being shunned. You said that you were smiley. And that kind of took me off guard because I hadn't thought about women being super smiley. But of course, women are told to smile all the time.
Women are always told to smile. Women are told to be nice and engaging. And a lot of those things just came natural to me. And so when I was in grade school, I remember always wanting to entertain people or make them laugh. I wanted to be friends with everybody. But there came a time, well, first of all, my dad got upset because the teacher said that I was a class comedian. And he told me, he says, no son of mine is going to be a comedian. You need to be serious. And then also my peer group around me, when I came into 5th grade, started telling me that I was wrong for being a boy, so I must be a fag or I'm gay or whatever. So they started calling me all these names. And I didn't like living that way. I thought, I've got to kill this somehow. And so it took every ounce of energy to suppress all of this. But the saddest part about this is that I became someone other than myself. I started trying to be serious. I started trying to be tough. I stopped smiling. I stopped trying to entertain people. And at that time, that was just a gift I had. I had one teacher write on a report card, "We love David's entertainment value for the classroom." That was my previous name. A lot of people don't use their dead name, but that was a childhood that I had. But there were just so many ways I got positive feedback. And so now I'm getting into junior high, and I've got to be someone completely different that's not me. And let me tell you, that takes a toll on you. And it took a toll on me every day. But I learned how to do it better and better. It never got easier. It never got more comfortable. But I had to do those things. And as I got older, I wore a suit and tie. When it was prom night, I wanted to wear the dress. But imagine me showing up at my date's house in a nice prom dress. I don't think that would have gone over well. So I wore the tux. I wore the tux for my wedding. I got married. I did all these things.
And all of
a
this
man
was in
supposed
Charlotte,
to do.
North Carolina.
This was
right?
in Charlotte.
Yeah.
I was born and raised in Charlotte. I went to school. My dad told me, he wanted me to major in business. I was okay about business. It wasn't really my passion, but I majored in business. And then I got out. I got a good job. We bought a house. We did everything that we were supposed to do. My ex was the wife and I was the husband. And as I got older, it became more and more untenable for me to live that way. And I started finding ways to suppress it that were not very healthy. I was overeating. I weighed about 300 pounds. I was drinking excessively because I needed to build this tunnel where I could be myself. I was regulated to a crawl space underneath my house where I could maybe put something on where I could just breathe for a moment because it just felt like freedom to me. I could just breathe, but it was under a crawl space. And something I learned, if you're in a crawl space, you can either just lay down and let the dirt eventually cover you up, or you could crawl out. And I decided I had to crawl out. And this was around age 52. And so I went to see a therapist, and I for the first time, just told him all about everything. And she looks at me and she says, "You don't want to be a woman, do you?" And I was like, okay, time to get another therapist. It probably took me 3 therapists to go to finally have someone say, "Deanna, you're transgender. It's never going to go away." And since that time, I've done scientific research on this. There's the sexual organs are usually created in the first half of the pregnancy, but the sexual identity is created in the second half. And I believe in a gender identity that can be affected by all sorts of release of hormones, release of any kind of chemicals in the brain. But there's nothing that won't make me think that this was how I was born. There were so many times in my life I would say to someone, "You can cut 3, you can cut 4, you could cut off my hand if you say this will go away." And of course, nobody can do that, right? Nobody could cut off your fingers and then suddenly it would go away. But it was so painful to me. It was so hard to be someone that I wasn't. And I mentioned the leash, and I know that's one of your themes. The leash around me of how I was supposed to be became so tight and so restrictive that I couldn't breathe anymore. And so the time came where I had a choice to make. I could either, I knew I was going to die probably in my 60s. And just so everybody knows, I did make it to my 60s. I'm 61 and I'm not dead yet, but I wouldn't have made it because my health was so poor. My habits were so poor, but it took me to finally become and I know that word gets overused a lot, but it was my authentic self. It was the self that I identified with. And the hardest part was telling my ex that I'm not who you think I am. And the reaction was swift. It was full of rancor. And I would say that I was out of the house in less than a month. I was asked to leave. There was a lot of anger there. And I understand I can't make her a lesbian, but I couldn't go on anymore. So I started the process of transitioning. And my story is very long. So if we want to stop at any point, we could talk about something else beside my story. But
what's really interesting, I hadn't thought about this before. One of the things that I talk about is that nice girl training, most girls go through some sort of nice girl training.
Yes.
And I've always talked about that being a mask. And so it's interesting hearing you talk about growing up. It's almost like you had your own mask, but it was a mask of David.
Yes, it was. And it runs both ways, right? Women are taught certain things. It's amazing that this still occurs, but we're told with what toys to play with. My dad would tell me all the time, you punch someone, if you get in a fight, you make sure you punch first. You don't take any shit from anybody. You are the one that needs to be aggressive. He would tell me all the time, if you don't stop your crying, I'm going to put you in one of your sister's dresses. And of course, my first thought was, please. But
wow.
But no, so it's really that dichotomy. You're told to be nice. I was told to be tougher and meaner. And what a screwed up world we live in. What if we just told people, hey, be yourself? And gender has always existed on a spectrum. You have your Arnold Schwarzenegger, you have your Jonathan Van Ness, say. I love him. So do I. But it's always been on a spectrum. And for us to say, you need to do this or you need to do that. So you're exactly right. Being a nice girl came natural to me. It just did. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong, but being a tough, aggressive male was the hardest thing for me to do because I was play acting. And, many people called me on my bluff and I got my ass kicked a lot. I got bullied. I got called gay. I got called all of those things. And it was very tough, but there is a place for someone who wants to be nice. There's a place for a girl who wants to be tough or who wants to not be nice to everybody. There's a place, there should be a place for everybody. But yes, I would say that again, if you try and get out of your nice girl box, tough guy box, then you'll be penalized by society, by your peers, by your family. So yes, I like that saying about being a nice girl or a tough guy. Why is is it one or the other? It's a false choice. But society, I even as a parent, I found myself telling my son, oh, don't play with that. You should play with this. And I thought, what am I doing? But we do that all the time. We tell the kids which toys to play with. And if a boy picks up a doll, 99% of the time, one parent's going to say, no, not that. You play with this. Or you play with the G.I. Joe, which is really made out of the same plastic, but
it's tough.
It's tough, right? It shoots people.
Right.
It kills people.
So what are those relationships like now? Since, obviously it was a huge leash that you had to overcome to be able to be your authentic self. Are there leashes now that are related to the new you or the real you and what the people that knew you before kind of expected or what it did to those relationships, like with your parents, with your kids?
Yes, but you're probably going to need to give me tissue paper because I'll probably cry. I know that. Oh, we actually do have
tissues.
You were ready for this. So the relationship with my ex and my kids was never the same. My ex had so much anger towards me. At first, we were like, let's, okay, let's accept this. We're not going to get lawyers. Let's make it easy. And the next thing I know, I get a letter from a lawyer saying you're no longer allowed on the property because I had been going over there and getting some of my stuff. It became very acrimonious very quickly. And we even had an agreement set up that I would see the kids on certain weekends, and then that just got broken. And it was, as a transgender woman, I didn't feel I had any power. And so it's awful. It was awful. I blew up my family. I say it set off a nuclear bomb. My ex just did not accept this. She was raised conservatively. Her parents were very conservative. They wanted her to have nothing to do with me. The sad parts are after I left and I went to a bachelorette apartment, which that's not nearly as sexy as it sounds, but I remember waking up and I had the pictures of my kids, and I was all alone in a house, and there were no kids to run in and jump on the bed and say, pancakes, daddy, or those impromptu conversations you have in the hall, because they reached a point they didn't want to be with me. Now, were mistakes made? Yes, they were on my part. I am sure of that. I wanted everyone to catch up to where I was, maybe quickly, but to have the penalty, I've not spoken to or seen my kids in 3 years. So it's not a good relationship at all. I miss them every day. Most of my friends were very supportive of me, so I was fortunate in that regard. When you're in a support center, like I went to the Durham LGBTQ Center, I quickly understood that a lot of this is talking about loss. And my loss was my family, but people lose their jobs, people lose their friends, or people could lose all three. And it's sad because I don't think any dad, and I told them they could still call me dad, but I don't think any dad should be shut out of their children's lives. I can't believe that that's good. Now, I can wait this out, which I'm sure I'll have to, and there might be 5 years down the road that one of my kids will want to know about my story. But now it's not good, and I just have to wait that out.
How old are they?
I'm sorry?
How old are the kids?
I have a 21-year-old, an 18-year-old, and a 16-year-old.
Okay.
Yes, and I've not seen my son in probably over 4 years, about 4 years, and then the other two around 3. I have no idea what he even looks like. He stayed out of school the year of COVID, so he's 1 year behind. But I would just love to be able to help him. Now, that's the sad part. I'm going to go ahead and jump into the happy part so I get people out of this uncomfortableness. I just got married about a year ago to the love of my life. She is wonderful. Her name is Amy, short for Imelda. She's from the Philippines, and we got married at Duke Chapel because she's a nurse there. And this time I got to wear what I wanted to wear. Aww. But the culture is just so different. Her whole family accepts me. She has 2 boys. It is. She has 2 boys, and they spoke at the wedding. And the things they said about me, I was bawling once again.
And how old are they?
They are 23 and 18. And we just sent my youngest son to UNCG yesterday. I dropped him off. He and I are very close. So I have a family now, and it's a shame that I had to lose a family, but I have gained so much with loving someone who just loves me unconditionally. Actually, the whole family does. The whole family embraced me, the sisters and siblings of my wife, and my sisters don't even speak to me anymore from my birth family. They also don't speak to me.
Yeah, we have a similar story in that respect.
Yeah.
I haven't talked to my sister in gosh, I think it's going on about 10 years now.
Oh my gosh.
And
Yeah.
my kids, it was difficult for them when I came out of the closet.
Yeah.
I came out of the closet in my late 40s. And yet it was only until rather recently. I mean, Jenny and I have been through it. She's watched the transference happen. My older son lives with us now at the moment, and my younger son is inviting us to come and spend time with him. So
that's amazing.
He's very, very
conservative.
There, that's the word for it.
That's the pretty word for it.
It's the pretty word for it.
It used to be that wasn't even a great word, but now that's the pretty word, because there's lots of other words we could all use. But
yeah, he's very conservative Christian. And but his wife is absolutely lovely, and I think she has done more to help him to kind of come around. Good. Actually. And so there is hope.
There's hope.
There's absolutely hope.
So.
But yeah, so what do you do? I know that you've transferred a lot with what you do. I mean, I can't imagine, I would imagine that just changes your life so much, not only with how you present, but also the way you think about things. And so you actually do a different job now too.
Yes, I was at Cisco.
Tell us about that.
I was at Cisco Systems for 25 years, and it was year 19 that I transitioned. And Cisco was actually very good about my transition. It's a California company. They did an outstanding job of having a meeting with my team while I was not there, just so people could ask questions. And probably 20 minutes into the meeting, I started getting, "I'm so happy for you. Congratulations." It was the most wonderful feeling in the world.
Wow, that's awesome.
Yeah, and of course I was crying there too. Yeah, estrogen really does make you cry a lot. It's true. But they're good tears, and I enjoy the freedom to cry now, because I couldn't do that when I was growing up. I was told, "Boys don't cry," but it was a good transition. The issue was not with Cisco Systems. The issue was that I did not enjoy the work I was doing. I was not doing something I was passionate about. So after 25 years, there was an incident where a VP had us doing this Excel spreadsheet, and I hate Excel. I'm sorry. I just don't. It's not one of my passions.
Yeah.
And we were complaining about having to do it because the salespeople didn't want us doing it. And the VP is on a conference call, and he says to us, "If you don't like it, you can leave." And that was just sort of a catalyst for me, because I thought, yeah, I can leave. I've been here 25 years. I'm not enjoying this. I had asked to get into training or education, and usually I was told, stay in your lane. It's okay. We can't afford to lose anyone now. But what I had been doing for the past 25 years was not something that lit me up. It paid me well, but it didn't light me up in the sense that, oh, I can't wait to do this. I got the Sunday blues like a lot of people, because I knew I had to go do a job that it felt exactly like that. And I decided last October that I would raise my hand. This is a couple of months after the VP said that. I'd like to have a story where I stood up and stood on the desk and said, "I don't like it here and I'm leaving." But it didn't happen that way because I wanted to walk out with some money.
No gold.
I wanted a layoff, and the first layoff, they wouldn't take me. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe I have to quiet quit a little bit. And I'm not proud of this, but I did quiet quit, which meant the second time they had the layoff, they were like, "Bye, here's your separation package." So I was glad to get that, because I had started this business about 3 years ago, called Deanna Jones Now. And the origin of that is that I went to a Raleigh chamber meeting, and I got to speak, and I sort of told my story just in a very broad way. And there were a lot of people that wanted to come up and talk to me who maybe had a transgender coworker, maybe had a transgender employee, or who had a family member. and they just wanted to know, or they wanted to tell me that the story touched them in some way. And then an opportunity came to speak at the Monty, which is a storytelling group in Durham. And I decided I'm going to do this. And it's a 12-minute talk because it was a curated talk. And I stood up and I told my story, and I got a standing ovation, and I was hooked. I was bitten by the bug. And I said, this is what I want to do for my life. So I started going out and speaking about the transgender experience, about my story, about how employers can make their employees feel more welcome, their LGBTQ plus employees especially, how they can make sure they're providing the right benefits, how they can make sure that they feel welcomed there. And that's one of the things that I started talking about. And then, of course, last year happened, and all of a sudden everybody's shutting everything down. And
DEI initiatives.
DEI initiatives shut down. So I thought, I got to pivot away. I can't talk about this. And I started talking about other things, but they never really resonated with me like it did to tell my story, or because that was my passion. And it had always been my passion. And I had, I had this thing that had happened to me, and it really made me understand that I had to lean in what did light me up, what my strength was. Would you like to hear that story?
So what did you find as your strength?
The strength I found was being able to talk to people and make them think differently about an idea, to help them understand. I'm a storyteller, so I always tell stories in all of my talks, and stories allow us to be able to put ourselves in a different situation. I don't know, say, what all that a Black person has ever had to go through, but if we can tell each other stories. And just a quick parallel to that. So when I moved out of my house for the first time in my life, when I moved to a neighborhood, I was worried that people wouldn't accept me. And I thought, well, think about BIPOC people. I mean, anytime they move into a neighborhood, they probably think, am I going to be accepted here? Are they going to let?
Yeah.
And it was so good for me to go through that, to think about that for the first time. So yes, I would say that it makes me think a lot. And I speak on diversity also, a lot of diversity, equity, and inclusion. And that's probably going to get beeped by some censor somewhere in DC. I said DEI, not by you all, but
I know, we're going to get our whole site taken down.
No, I can sit up here and give you a string of expletives.
We're obviously so concerned about that.
I know. That's why I'm here, because you're not concerned about it.
Mm-hmm.
So prior to the stuff of the last year and DEI kind of becoming a taboo thing, were corporations asking you to come in and do like training for the employees? Or is it just making the management aware of how they can change things like benefits and groups and opportunities and things like that? Like, what level of within the corporation were you really speaking with?
I was speaking mostly with ERG groups, a few groups that had managers. I never really got the business off the ground at that time, because I was working full time at Cisco, and it's really hard to start your own business.
Yeah.
And it wasn't until I left in last October that I started putting in the 20-hour days. Some days it's that way, just putting in the hard work, and I'm starting to see some of the fruits of that labor.
Okay.
But what happened after I said I was not going to talk about it anymore, I started talking about these other things that just felt too frameworky for me. In other words, they felt like, oh, I have got to have this point, and this point. And that's not really the speaker I am. Mm-hmm. I like to speak about things that I feel passionate about. And I've gone and told my story in a lot of places for free at different times. And then, of course, I have also been paid. But I was at a restaurant with a friend of mine, and a waiter brought up a free dish for me and said, this one's on the house. Deanna, I heard you speak about a year ago, and you changed my life. And of course, I'm just bawling again. That's the theme. And I go up to him and I hug him, and the person I was with starts asking, "Where did you hear? What did she speak about?" And it was about my story, and it was also about getting in touch with the gifts that you have. So when I thought back on my life in the second, third, and fourth grade, where I wanted to do puppet shows, I wanted to get in front of the class. I've never been nervous getting up really and speaking in front of people, except when I was David. But I felt like I was starting to get back in touch with those gifts. And so that's what I go out and I talk about now, is finding your passions, making sure that you're doing something. I think a lot of corporations, we do a really bad job about finding people's passions and then putting them in those places, because I wanted to be in something in education, but I couldn't get into that. They didn't recognize that as a strength that I would have.
Right.
So one of the things that you mentioned was that one of the first places you went to was the Raleigh LGBT.
It was Durham LGBT.
Durham LGBT. So, but since then, you've gotten pretty involved.
Very.
So tell me a little bit about that, and how did the involvement come to be? Because you are currently the president.
Yes. What happened was, after I transitioned, I could not go to enough places. And I want to tell you, most of the time not most of the time, a lot of times people say, "You have regrets?" Because the regret myth is so blown out of proportion. Some studies show it's as high as 6%. Most studies show it's around 3 or 4%. And of those 3 or 4%, a lot of them will transition back to what they had transitioned to before. And one of the biggest reasons people have regrets is that they're not getting the support that they need. For me, when I became Deanna, everything changed. I was drinking the ice water. It was like a veil was lifted, and I could be in front of people as myself. And so I would just show up at these meetings, and I went to a Chamber of Commerce. It was called Harmony LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce. I didn't know anybody there. I would have never gone before. I would have just stayed at home and streamed. What was that show? The Lion. Everyone was watching about the guy who had the lions. I can't remember. But I decided I wanted to.
You're talking about
Tiger King. Yes, Tiger King. We both thought of it at the same time. But
That's because my wife and I, we binge watched it.
That's what everybody was binge watching. So I wanted to get out in front of people, and I go to this chamber meeting. I don't know anybody there, and I think I'm going to leave because I don't know if it really fits. And then someone comes up to me and they ask me this question that I had always dreaded, which is, "Tell me about yourself." And that question, held a lot, was fraught with angst for me. What do you want to know? That I prefer women's clothes to men's clothes. So I always had to lie about who I really was. I had to pretend I was tough. And I have a whole interview story about that. But this person asked me that, and I decided I was not going to lie. I was just going to tell the truth. And so I just told this man who had just come up to me, and I said, "This is all about me." And then he did the same. He told me about himself. And for one of the first times, I felt this conversation was a connection was made, a meaningful connection. It wasn't, "Hey, my name's Deanna." Yeah, my name's Deidre. Not to say I've ever had a fake conversation with Deidre, but just as an example, because I never have, but just as an example, a lot of times we do that. "How are you doing?" "Fine." But I just felt this meaningful connection, and I didn't realize it at the time, but that was the president of the Harmony Chamber of Commerce. And yes, Deidre did let you know that I am the president of the Chamber of Commerce today. And I am an advocate for this community. I love being a part of it. I love our mixers, our educational events. The LGBTQ Chamber of Commerce is just a commerce to help support the LGBTQ plus business community. So we provide networking opportunities. We provide educational opportunities. We provide companies the ability to come in and provide an educational seminar and also be able to showcase their product. And I am one of the things that makes me the most hopeful about this chamber is we're starting to see a lot of young people come into it, Gen Zers.
That's great.
Oh, wow.
And what I love about it is, they didn't go into corporate America. They were like, no, that's a nightmare to do that, because a lot of them saw their parents and what they had to go through. And so they started their own business. And they may be in the gig economy, or they may be doing wellness, or they may be doing face plates for outlets and things like that. And they always tell me, this is what I want to do. It is my passion. And I just love to see that, because, we were taught from, at least I would say, Gen Y and the baby boomers. I don't care if you like what you do. You do it. You do it to get your paycheck. And I think kids are starting to think differently. Like, there's more to life than just a paycheck or doing something that I don't want to do. And so I feel like, that we can get some of these young businesses in and we can help them. We can help change the business community here in the Triangle area.
Well, and in some ways, that sort of is a great way to combat the whole almost war against DEI stuff, right? Because if you start your own business, you're not a DEI hire. You've established your own business, so you can do what you want. It doesn't become a DEI issue that you have to worry about how are the laws changing and blah, blah, blah. This is my business. So I can make my decisions about what I'm doing and things like that. So that's another good thing, I think, about the young kids coming in.
That's an excellent point, Jenny. And I think the only DEI war that's going on is a certain group of people. Many of them may happen to be of the baby boom generation. But when I talk to managers of corporations, hiring managers, they tell me they would say about 85% of their population that's coming in to apply for jobs is asking about diversity, is asking about their diverse policies. So this is just a war between one group of people and another. And it's not real, because millennials and Gen Zers find diversity in a company very important. And it also is an indicator of success. Of course, I'm not telling you all anything that you don't already know, but it's a huge indicator of your company's success if you have a diverse company. It's absolutely crazy that we're out there trying to quell this, that opens the workplace up for more people. It makes no sense to me. And I'm sure there are lots of reasons. It's a dog whistle. It's so many other things that are actually going on. And it's a war, for people to hold on to the power that they have. But this world is going to change in the next, I would say, 5 years. It's going to change a lot.
And I have my own theories about how it's going to change, but I would love to hear how you think it's going to change.
Well, there's some factors that are going to be at play here. First of all, you're going to, in 5 years from now, 75% of your working population is going to be Gen Z and the millennials. Baby boomers will most likely have retired or
in a nursing home.
In a nursing home. Yes. So you've got that. So if you're not doing what you need to do to get those employees, at the companies gaining experience there, then you're going to be hard. You're going to be hard pressed to find employees. The second big factor that's getting ready to happen is the population decline. This high school class is the largest high school class for a very long period of time. Because there's going to be a worker shortage. Yes,
the birth rate has decreased.
The birth rate is
significantly
decreased. And I'm sure there are lots of reasons we could say why, but some of them we may not even know, but it has decreased. And that's going to affect an employer's ability to get employees. And now is the time to make your company more appealing to this younger generation. Gen Alpha's, going to start working in the next 5 years. And so you have to think about things differently. Today, it's just a blip. And I guarantee you this, and this is why I don't get so upset about it, because the factors of our population demographics will change and the workforce will change. And also, in the next 5 years, BIPOC workforce will be about 48 or 49%. Are you going to tell them you're not a diverse company and you don't believe in DEI and you think they're going to come work for you? I mean, there's so many people ignoring the trends that are going on right now.
Look what happened to Target.
Yeah.
I mean, Target, was very vocal about taking down their DEI policies.
Yeah.
And then there was a huge outcry. And people stopped going. And I know a lot in the BIPOC community were like, I don't want to see you at a Target.
Yeah. Yeah.
Do not show up at a Target. If I see a Target bag in your hand, I'm going to slap it out of your hand, because they took it very, very seriously. And it brings me to the point that you talked about young people. And I find it very interesting. You aren't the only person that does it. We've done it for generations. Generations always look at, well, hey, all those races, they're getting older and we've got this new generation. And while that is true that there are pockets of, more progressive youth, you also have youth that is in school being taught by racists.
Yes.
So unfortunately, I think, we have to, as a society, it's lovely to think about, the world's going to change because the youth is going to, yay, youth. And yet we all, my kind of stamp is to say, that's great, but we also need to take responsibility for how we've been raised and how we are not fighting that. And instead of just not being racist, we need to be anti-racist. We need to be we need to be DEI ourselves and say things and help that to change and show younger generations, this is how you confront a racist. This is how you do that. But that means we have to take our own mask off and we need to go, okay, this is wrong. And I'm going to do something about it.
Yeah. And I'd like to add a trend to that. And I agree. A lot of us tend to walk around going, yay, youth. And we said that in the election. We said, if we can just get the youth to get out and vote, then the right candidate will win. Well, what happened that we didn't realize is the youth did go out and vote. And there's a certain segment, most of them were uneducated or non-college educated.
And following people
white
like
men.
Nick Fuentes.
Right.
And yeah.
They did show out in strong numbers and they overwhelmingly voted for Donald Trump. Now, there were post-election surveys. And a lot of them they said, what made you vote for this candidate? And the majority answer for a lot of those young white men voting for Trump was, I felt like he heard us. And to your point, we can't just walk around saying, yeah, young people, they're just going to do it automatically. I wholeheartedly agree with what you're saying. We have got to take an active role, de-brainwash them, detoxify them, because there are a lot of bad influences out there. And I think that, if we have this issue with, non-college educated youth who are not really keeping up with what's going on, why are we not we have to answer these questions. Why do we not make college available for everybody? Why are we segmenting our population into people who've been to college and people who haven't? Because people who have not been to college are not going to be able to it's very rare, it does happen, but are not going to be able to make the same income. And they're going to always feel like they're being the replacement theory. They're being replaced by these people. And that's not what's happening. That's just what somebody's telling them.
Right.
So I agree with you. A lot of education is needed. We can't just depend on the youth. They have to understand what's going on, and it's our job to do that. You're right. It's our job to teach anti-racism. It's
and not just tolerance, but to each other.
Yes, to each other.
If we hear a friend say something, instead of sitting there and going, or just not reacting, instead saying something and saying, that's offensive.
Yeah. The biggest thing for me that's offensive right now are people going around saying, oh, we want to use merit instead of diversity, which merit is one of the biggest myths out there.
Absolutely.
Merit is based on privilege. You can, if you have two of the same applicants and you show one of them has accomplished more, 99% of the time, that person accomplished more because maybe they had their dad play on the golf course with someone they knew. I saw this all the time at a technology company that I worked at. We even had an internship program for sales, which was very coveted to get into. And we were laughing because we kept seeing the VP's last names in this internship group. Well, not everybody got to have a parent or dad or a mom who's a VP. Meritocracy is a myth in today's society. And when you say merit, and what kills me is when you have someone who speaks from the White House, has pictures of his dad who made him a millionaire. Am I being too political?
No.
Good. Whose dad made him a millionaire at age 8, talking about we need to get back to merit. He would not know merit if it kicked him in the face, but that's their word they use is merit.
Yeah.
And it's a false dichotomy. We cannot walk around and say, oh, let's go by merit, because merit is privilege. It always is. A student that goes to Duke or some other Ivy League school is going to have more opportunities than someone, say, who went to Campbell University, which is where I went to. But I get the fact the intent is good, but it is a way for us to become anti-DEI.
Yeah, and I would agree. Wes, you were talking about your experiences working in a tech company. I used to work in a tech company as well. Yeah. And my experience was very similar. I wasn't passionate about what I was doing. I was looking for ways to get out so I could do something that was more interesting to me, more fulfilling to me. And I also noticed people would ask me all the time, oh, how do I get into that company? Because it's a large employer in this area and it seems stable, right? So people were going, oh, I want to work there. I want to work there. I'm like, you got to know somebody. Honestly,
that is still the number one way to get a job. We have all these AI tools, but most of these AI tools are out there filtering applications and resumes. And the way still the number one way to get a job is networking. To know someone.
Yeah.
And I wasn't high enough on the pole that I'm like, knowing me is not going to do much for you. You got to know somebody.
People come to me and tell me, help me get a job at this company. I'm like, really? They do not listen to me.
Right, exactly. Well, and another thing I think as we were talking about that, I think it's extremely important to kind of come back to what you are now loving to do and getting to do so much. It's telling your story, sharing your story, your multiple stories, so that people can find connection and they can find ways to understand better. Because if they're uneducated, if they don't know what diversity is or what it can look like or what's included or how it can work and maybe not be so scary to them, then they are going to be afraid of it. They are going to push back on it. But the more people can start to understand or connect with or have somebody in their life like, oh, I know somebody like that, or I know, it just helps spread empathy and connection and understanding so that all those big fancy word, DEI doesn't become something that people are just afraid of. They start to understand it and go, no, if they can do critical thinking, of course, which is not always the case, but they can start to put their own pieces of the puzzle together and understand, oh, it's not a scary thing.
Right. It's not a scary thing. And a lot of people want diversity. And a lot of, CEOs know that they have to have diversity. It's become something political. So, but that's a good point.
Yeah, so I think it's important work that you're doing. I'm thrilled that you have been able to, go through, even though it was a tough life that you went through, and it was a long time that you felt leashed in a way that was, I'm sure, very painful. To be able to come out of that now and not only feel free from those leashes, but be able to then go forward and kind of spread the message and be inspirations to people, some of which have already come up to you and let you know that
Yeah.
you know, made a huge impact in their life. That's beautiful. I'm so
Yeah, I wouldn't trade this for anything. I really wouldn't. It is an amazing life. Do I wish I'd done it earlier? Yes, but I really
It's
couldn't.
the right time for you.
That's right. It's like planting a tree. If you didn't do it yesterday, the best day to do it is today. And
right.
I think about that. And it is absolutely amazing, the difference in myself and how I feel and how I move through this world.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Thank
That's what
you.
we need.
That's really beautiful. So how, if somebody wanted to bring you in to talk to their organization, what's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
Probably through my website, deannajones.com. There's an application they can go to and just fill out interest, or you could just reach out to me at Deanna Jones. My phone number's on there. I'm always willing to go to a company and talk and tell my story and just help people understand. That's all I want to do. I don't come with an agenda. I'm not political. I might have gotten a little political in this show, but you know, when you have
We're political, so
when you have as fuck in the title,
yeah.
Sure.
Well, and look at it's sexism, stereotype, shame, and
That's
possibly
right.
racism. We're like, yeah,
No, I'm not going to be political about it, and I'm not political, and I don't like the fact when people say, "Well, you're too political right now," because I didn't ask to be political. I just asked to be myself. You know,
Right.
my passport got delayed because I was renewing it, and it came back with an M on it. And you're making me political. So now, if I go to Paris, which I really want to go to, I may have to explain the M. But you know how I'm going to explain it is, you know who our president is, right? Because my picture doesn't look anything like a male on there. I mean, I don't know. Some people might be able to see it, or they might not. But the point, and so many times I've heard this, the point is the cruelty. Right? Because why would it matter what I want on my passport?
It's to shame people.
It's to shame people.
It's to shame people.
Yeah.
And, you know, they're talking about taking away driver's licenses. Here in North Carolina, they just passed an anti-trans bill that makes an addendum to a birth certificate now that you, in fact, were born biologically, you know, whatever you were born in the biological way. And it is cruelty. And, you know, to try and tell parents that their kids shouldn't be subjected to anything like this. It's awful because, you know, kids feel this way at a very early age, and to not be able to express themselves or even to research it, it just doesn't make any sense to me. And I have to realize that, well, they're not trying to make sense. They're trying to dog whistle, and they're trying to be cruel about it. And
yes,
yeah,
a lot of people ask me, they say, "Oh, are you thinking about leaving?" I'm not leaving. This is my country too. And I am going to stay, and I am going to fight. And we need people to do that. And it's not for everybody. And I understand some people, and I have quite a few friends who are just saying, I'm either going to move to a blue state, or I'm going to move to Europe, somewhere in Europe where this is not considered such a gigantic, massive thing. Because it's really not. All I'm asking is to just get to be myself. Isn't that part of what the American dream is? You know, when did we start saying, no, you can't be this or you can't do this? And I want to stay. I want to tell my story. I want people to understand. I want it to resonate with them. And, you know, if at the end of one of my talks, somebody does come up to me and said, I didn't really understand that. And it's hard for people to understand this. I get it. When it came to, I think, you know, with gay people, a lot of people might be able to get there, although it took a lot of angst and trial for that. But there's an analogous experience to that, and that is sex, right? But very few people on this planet have a gender identity that's different from their body. we're around 0.6%. And so they can't make that journey there. They just can't, because they don't feel that way. I ask people when I go out on a talk, I say, how many of you woke up thinking about your gender this morning? And I did every day of my life.
Yeah.
And then I ask them the other question. I say, if I gave you $10 million today, would you change your gender? And I've only had one person, and it was a mom who wanted to pay for her kids' college, say yes. Most everybody says, no, I wouldn't change my gender for the world. But that's what I had to grow up with, is being in a different or incorrect gender for me and wanting to change it. I would have paid 10 million if I had it. So it's really, people can't make that journey in their heads of what it would be like because they don't feel that way. And it's my job to go out and help them do that. And that's what I want to do.
Yeah.
It's
Wouldn't
awesome.
it be nice if everything was actually equitable in terms of gender, where there was no need to even have a gender designation on a driver's license or
Yeah, there were
ID?
just people.
Right.
Yeah.
What good does that do? I mean,
Yeah.
you know, I've looked at driver's licenses and I've gone, you don't look anything like that. Or people
Right.
change over time. What if you
Yep.
dye your hair red? We don't seem to make you, you know, change your entire identity if you dye your hair red.
Right.
You're right. What does it matter that much? And, you know, I had somebody say, well, if you had to go to the hospital, and I'm like, if my gender's that important, I hope they would look at me and be able to, you know, they're doctors, right? So
Right.
there's no good argument for it, other than it's just the point of being cruel, I think.
Yeah.
So there's not a valid reason that we have to go around plastering F and M on everything. And, you know, in that bill they passed, it's all based on falsehoods. You know, one of the things they say in the bill is there are only two genders, and it is based on this. And they seem to forget about the 1.6% of people that are born intersex. So there are more than.
But now you're talking about higher education.
Yes.
Now you're talking about biology and genetics and education.
Well, and it was
although
interesting.
even, I mean, there are third world countries where indigenous people have always seen gender as a spectrum. So it's not just about education. It's about what we've been sort of led to believe in terms of there needs to be two boxes versus fluidity.
But don't you also think that a lot of that has to do with the fact that community is more highly valued in those societies? For example, in Indian culture, right here, I don't mean India like India, but Indians right here, I guess Native Americans, thank you.
Yes.
Native Americans, that, you know, it was such a sense of community and not about ostracizing, but about helping each other, and what is it called? Two-spirit.
Two-spirit is normally what it's called in the Native American population.
Yeah.
And
that was very highly regarded.
Yeah.
A two-spirit individual.
Yes.
And
in
so,
India too.
Yeah.
They're highly regarded.
But I think there's more community in different cultures. And I think it's one of the things that is vastly, deeply missing in our society is a sense of community. Unless you go to an LGBTQ group or church, but we don't have, little pockets of community for the most part in our country.
Yeah, I learned that marrying a Filipino. I am just overcome by the amount of community that they all feel with each other. And they text each other every day. I haven't texted my sisters in probably 6 months, but they haven't texted me or I haven't texted them. But their sense of community made me realize that a lot of times white people don't have a good community. We're all biting at each other. I like to joke. I was raised as a WASP, the white Anglo-Saxon Protestant. WASP eat their young. My parents were like, you're getting kicked out of the house when you're 18. And I understand that. But it was just like they were done. That was it. And there were a lot of ways that I was raised with not a lot of unconditional love. Like I never remember, just feeling so close to my parents, but Amy's kids feel so close to her. And it's fascinating to watch. And her brothers and her sisters are there on a dime if they need her.
It's
and
a different value system.
It is a different value system. And most cultures have a strong sense of community because they have to. But here we're more, because I think a lot of that has to do with the fact that it is a capitalist country. It is every man, woman for themselves. And we don't worry about the touchy-feely, soft, stuff. And it has been amazing to just kind of look at the culture she grew up in and what I grew up in. It's very different. Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah, I don't mean to rail against white people. Of course, I am one, but
we are too, and I do the same thing.
But no, I do think we are missing a lot of things. And going back to about, there have always been transgender people throughout history. I mean, there are ancient paintings that even show that. Colonialism, again, I know that's the boogeyman, but they were the ones that really tried to take it out of the Native American population. They were very strict about who could wear what. Of course, at that time, the men were wearing white tights and had makeup on. That seemed to be
wigs and
but they were very strict about gender roles. And I just think that there's room enough for all kinds of people who exist on a spectrum.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Amen.
Do you have anything you want to add before we start wrapping up here, Jenny?
I don't think so. That was a great discussion.
Do you have anything that you want
I
to?
don't. I just think I'd love for you to call me, even if you are dealing with a child right now. I am free. I am open to talk about anything. I will answer any question. Hopefully in the notes or somewhere. I don't even mind putting my phone number, but my goal is to make sure that you feel comfortable in your body. And if you want to help your child or a relative or even a friend, then these are the things. Acceptance is the number one thing you can do. And just want to emphasize that. Yes, that's all.
That's awesome. That brings me to our Rebel Move this week. And so I really want to challenge those of you who have listened today to reclaim a part of yourself that in the past you have quietly fit in. You have pushed that aside so that you could quietly fit in, and to find that again. You were talking about acceptance, and wow, self-acceptance is so huge. Getting to a point of self-trust, self-acceptance, and radical self-care and radical self-love. And so if there's a part of you, maybe there's you can't imagine wearing some crazy shirt. You're sure you're going to be called crazy things, but it's you. You feel alive when you put it on. Put it on. Put it on and spend some time recognizing that it's not performance, that you're actually remembering who you are and stepping into yourself for maybe the first time for some people. Right?
Yes, I love that.
As always, we want to share just a few websites with you. 5051.1 is a great website to go to find out what's going on politically in our country and different
protests.
Protests that you can go to. And of course, don't forget about generalstrikeus.com, where you can sign up. And so at some point when we get to, 3.5% of the population that signs up for it, then we can go on a mass general strike. If you want to do something right now, 5calls.org, where you can find out what issues are being discussed, who your local representatives are, and also your national representatives, and make those calls anytime you want. And I have one more that we want to share, Mobilize.
Yeah, mobilize.us. Mobilize.us has a lot of information about groups that you can get involved with, volunteer opportunities for whatever cause is near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, especially local. And that's really great. You can put your city in and find out where you can help out. And these aren't necessarily protests. They can be community events, putting houses together that aren't a part of Habitat for Humanity, just different ways that you can help out your neighbor. And we welcome you to please check those out. I don't know of any protests that are upcoming. Do you have any idea? I haven't heard
of any big ones, so I'm not sure.
No, I haven't heard anything recently.
I did actually hear Rachel Maddow say the other day, I think she was on Colbert, so you probably saw it. She had mentioned, and I don't know when this was from because it was just a clip that I saw. It might have been from a while ago, but she said, I think it was during Trump's first administration, the Women's March was the largest single peaceful protest that had been documented to that point. She said, we haven't repeated that in his second term, but she said this time there has been some sort of protest somewhere in the country every single day.
Yeah.
And obviously sometimes way more than just one, but she's like, any day of the week, I can give you a city in the U.S. where they're protesting
something. Yeah.
I'm sure there's a website going on. Probably for that.
Yeah, all those websites have those kinds of things. If you enjoyed today's episode, subscribe, follow, and share. If you have a topic or question or you want to be a guest, go to our website, unleashedafpodcast.com, and go to WWJDD, which stands for What Would Jenny and Deidre Do? We'd love to hear from you. And Jenny, you want to close us out?
I'd just like to say one thing. Thank you very much, Deidre and Jenny, for giving me this opportunity, giving me this voice to be heard. I thoroughly appreciate it. This has to be one of my favorite podcasts, and I was very happy to be on it. So thank you. And I've been on quite a few.
Yeah,
but I love this.
Honored.
Thank you.
Yeah. I know when I just ran into you last weekend, you had been on somebody else's podcast that I know, and I was like, oh my gosh, she's getting around. So thank you so much. We really appreciate you taking the effort, making the time to come here and participate with us. Jenny, you want to go ahead and close us out?
Yeah. So we always like to remind our watchers and listeners, you're not too much. You're not broken. The system is. You're unleashing. Keep going.
All right. Until next time, take care.
I'm done trying to live up to others' expectations. Family, society, class, race, sex, or religions. It's time to break free from the isms that make us feel